Azzopardi.
In the house.
As we turn it around this time, it's me interviewing you. I think it was a couple of years ago you had me on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would have been a while ago now.
Yeah. So introducing you, I was like, how do I introduce Holes? And I was looking and I was like, so author, mother, psychic intuitive, businesswoman, dabbled in modeling, also speaks in planets and stars and astrology.
I don't even know how to describe myself, so I think you're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, basically, you got some skills. And the thing I also love about you is, while yes, I love how you speak to me in planets and stars, Mercury's in, and my planets and all the rest, and the fairy godmother, and you can, there's that intuitive component of you where you can go off, you can be there.
Yeah.
And also we can sit and have a strategic business conversation.
Yeah.
With a finer things in life cocktail, and there's no shame around the fact that you want to earn money, and there's that beautiful balance of the spirituality and where you can go, but then also you're in the real world.
Totally. Thank you.
Which is cool, and it's why we get along so well.
It's all the Virgo in my chart, Janoah.
There we go. She's already got that. Translation.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, the big congrats first off for the book.
Thank you. I know by the time people listening to this, it will literally be on the shelves, which is just surreal to even think.
People Pleaser's Guide to Putting Yourself First.
Yeah, I know. I mean, perfect book for me to write, because Gal needed to figure that out and then write it. But yeah, it's very exciting.
People pleasing. I didn't know I was a people pleaser, right? So for a long time, I was just being the nice guy, right? Isn't that what you're supposed to be? And had no idea what it meant to be a people pleaser, really. So just to start off with, like, talk to that. So how would you, if you're sitting there going, I don't think I'm a people pleaser, I just think I'm a nice guy or a nice girl, you start looking for little indicators that you may go down the realm of the unhealthy people pleaser.
People pleaser. Yeah. I think what it actually comes down to is in the title of the book, it's The People Pleaser's Guide to Putting Yourself First. And I think that is the notion of, when it's tipping into unhealthy territory, is when you're putting everyone else before your own wants, needs, and desires. So people pleasing at a detriment can really come at a cost to your own identity, your own values, and really life and the way you live and show up as a whole. It surprises me because, for me, I've always known I have people-pleasing tendencies. I've always felt that underlying sense of, I'm choosing other people before actually choosing my truth, to keep the peace for the most part. So and it's happened a few times in the last week, someone has said to me, I didn't even realize I was a people pleaser. It takes me by surprise, but it is that little fine line that you share between being the good girl, the good guy, the nice one, just keeping the peace. But when it comes at a cost to what your own truth is, then that's the detrimental side of people pleasing.
And just continuing with that in terms of the personal experience of that, what I found and realized was there is this underlying kind of resentment to people and others. It was almost like this passive thing that I was finding weird ways to, like, get back at them, all these internal narratives about who they were, and projecting that onto them. And really it was like, if you just said you couldn't do that, or made a point and said, no, it's your turn, or whatever that looks like, we'll take it away. But I didn't even realize I was in this, like, the internal, like,
yeah, it's all shadow. And a lot of the time it's our own doing. It's our own manifestation of this resentment, of this envy or jealousy or whatever has come as a result of us just subconsciously choosing other people. Because what we're doing when we're pleasing someone else by saying yes when we really want to say no, when we offer our assistance in, helping someone move a house on the weekend when really we're feeling run down, but we're like, the good guy, the good girl in me says I should do this. And we can talk about that. A lot of people pleasing is seeped in the shoulds versus the wants. But when we're doing that, what we're actually internalizing is, that person is more important than me. That person is more deserving than me. And that's where the resentment builds, because we are literally communicating to ourselves that we are not as valuable as other. And that's where it starts to get really murky.
And so why do we become people pleasers?
Oh God, how long's a piece of string?
It's a bit of a base understanding for people to go, okay, so why are some people not worried about it and some people so driven to please?
So it depends how we want to approach this question. The first piece is, if we were looking from an astrological lens, anyone with a strong Libra chart is likely going to have more people-pleasing tendencies, because Libran energy is the balance and harmony and almost wanting to keep the peace. But if we wanted to go deeper, looking at your childhood is really, really necessary to see where in our upbringing were we taught to be the good one, the nice one, the kind one, the person who's friends with everyone. That was a big piece for me. My mom would always say, you know, you want to be friends with everyone. And so at that, we're actually almost being misdirected away from what we intuitively feel is positive or negative for us. As kids, we're so intuitive, right? We're hyper aware of who's really valuable and who's contributing positively to our lives and who perhaps isn't. And you spend any time with children and they will tell you what they want. They will say yes or no. And for the most part, unless their parenting and upbringing has been incredibly conscious, we can get wronged for that. You know, I remember growing up, there was a particular family member who would go in for the kiss on the lips. It's such a Seinfeld like episode. And, you know, you've got the auntie that like has the red lipstick on and goes for the kiss on the lips, and always felt incredibly uncomfortable. But it was like, do the polite thing and like let her kiss you. And it's like, what we're actually teaching our children in those moments is to put someone else's decisions, and that's bodily autonomy stuff. Like that's deep shit. But putting that before what our body is communicating, which is, that doesn't make me comfortable. So people pleasing actually runs incredibly deep when it comes to the environments that we were brought up in. And whether you had you know, inverted commas, toxic upbringing or not, I did. And I share some of that in my story in the book. But it actually doesn't matter, because it can be as simple as you as a child not wanting to hug someone hello and being told that you're a bad child for refusing that. And then you start to question, well, what I'm being shown in my own bodily response versus what I'm being told outside of self are two very different things.
Yeah. Well, and in contrast, so I would say that I grew up in a healthy environment. I still became a people pleaser. Yeah. And even as an energy, like I went through a period there where I was like, particularly in relationships and dating, where I was I found myself without realizing that I was in that sort of people pleasing, trying to be the nice guy.
Yes.
Unattractive. This should be pulling in all like thinking that in my mind.
Yeah.
But it's not working. As an energy as well, it's not exactly overly, you know, the whole nice guys finish last. There's something the energetics of that as well, right?
Absolutely. It can become a repellent, especially, and I think it comes down to intention. Like, you can be a kind person and have kindness in your heart and still hold really firm boundaries of what's a yes and what's a no in your life, and be showing up in your life from a place of, this is what I choose, versus, oh, I better say this thing or I better do this thing because it's going to be perceived as me being nice. People read between the lines, basically, when it comes to intention and energy. They know what the intention is behind. And when we read that someone is being inauthentic in their expression of what they're choosing, which is people pleasing to a degree, there's an inauthenticity and a disconnect between what we desire, then people will always be that little bit more, even if they're not consciously aware of it, a little bit more suspicious of, Hollie said she was going to do this thing for me, but I can feel her energy's off with that, and I don't necessarily trust that.
Trust. That's a really good point. So even in the sense of someone says, oh, I want to do this, and you can be like, oh, but I need something over here. And if you can throw them off so quickly, you can't necessarily trust that person. Because if you're 100%. Able to, you know, very quickly put them into doing what you wanted them to do, you were doing other things.
Exactly. And the thing with what you were speaking about earlier with resentment and how that builds into the narrative around pleasing others is, if we can't actually build that trust with other people, we're not building the trust with ourselves and our own word and what we're choosing. And so then we can't follow through with the word that we commit to ourselves, our own commitments. And when you have a distrust in self, as we all know, we're in this game of personal development, any level of follow through requires a trust in self. If we're not trusting ourselves because we're saying one thing and doing another thing, then we're never going to be fully committed to that bigger vision and that bigger life. And this is why what I've been teaching in this new realm of people pleasing is it's actually a precursor to living a life beyond your wildest dreams. Because if you're showing up from that people pleasing archetype, you are not trusting in your highest vision and your highest calling, and then you can't possibly cultivate all that's there for you when you're in that vibration.
It's something that we're learning more and more, and just that the distrust in self obviously directly relates to self-worth.
Yes.
Being a manifestation queen, it's, you know, if you are at a level of self-worth that doesn't match what you want to call in, you're not gonna be able to do it.
This is it. And the first piece of the book, the first part of my book, it's divided into 4 parts. The first part is know thyself, and it's all about self-worth. We look at self-worth, your values, and self-sabotage, and all of these pieces, because it's a lens reflecting the way we behave in any way. It's a mirror back to what we believe about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we talk to ourselves. And if we're communicating in this spiral of I'm not good enough, this person's better than me, comparison and all of those things, we will consistently show up in a way that's communicating that outwardly. And that's for the most part what we're going to attract. So this is it's a cornerstone to magnetism. It's a cornerstone to calling in the bigger things. And it's not that you're never going to be a people pleaser ever again, because I still am, and I catch myself in moments. But what's better than, you know, eradicating people pleasing entirely is being aware of the patterns that are lending themselves to more people pleasing behaviors in your life, the stories underneath those, and then how we can show up in a new way.
So tying on, I'm reading this book on shadow work at the moment, and it was talking a little bit about some of the old school religious beliefs around giving. It's all about giving versus giving is better. And I was just thinking about it. I was like, off the face value, I would give, of course. Of course you should give before receive. Isn't that the way we should be? And I had to stop and think about it. I was like, maybe not.
Yeah, it's such a big one, especially if we're doing work on magnetism or calling in like bigger things. It's a piece around reciprocity and your intention. Again, it comes back to intention. Why are you giving? Are you giving with the expectation to receive, or are you giving from a place that's really heart-centered? And it's not even about being selfless, because I question how possible that is, especially in this day and age. There's always something underlying, even if it's you're giving to show a person that you love them. Like there's an intent there that's connected with self, but it really is back of that intention in the giving and the receiving. But reciprocity is important. So it's more about not I'm giving to get this, but I'm feeling valued in this exchange when I'm giving and when I'm receiving. So I speak about this particularly in the book when it comes to connection and relationship. A big piece when we look at friendships is when you're showing up in friendship, what are your values specifically in friendship dynamics? And for me, a big one was showing up for me when I need it, right? Showing up and giving me time and energy. And I need to be open to receiving that. So a lot of the time people would want to show up for me and I'd be like, no, I'm fine. I've got this. I don't want to talk about it. And so what I'm communicating is completely opposite to what I actually value and desire. And that's sending a really confusing message to the people in my life. So it's super important that we get clear on that reciprocity in relationship and what we value in connection, to really clarify if we're feeling that we're open to receiving and giving in that beautiful, harmonious way.
Yeah. So the bottom line there is it is extremely healthy to be able to receive and receive and also to signal to other people that we want to receive, and especially in relationships, it's a big one, right? Like if you sort of have this half wall of I'm fine, you can stop asking,
and then we get bitter.
Yeah, like what?
I haven't got anything, and it's like, well, because you're presenting this, and again, people pleaser. I don't want to bother anyone. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. I talk about this in my first trimester when I was pregnant, and I was really, really low and felt isolated and quite depressed. But no one knew. I didn't tell anyone. And so I had this bitterness of people not showing up for me, but they didn't know I needed it. So it's always about taking responsibility for the role we're playing in a dynamic. And if people aren't psychic, then they're not going to know. So yeah, there's a piece around really clear communication of what our values are, what's important to us in any exchange, and what it is we're seeking to receive in a dynamic.
So what would you say would be the best first intro step for someone who's like, they're like, oh, some of this stuff's resonating. I can see myself like having this bitterness towards people, and I actually want to say yes to everything. And I feel really uncomfortable saying no to things. Like, there's like, okay, so now what? I mean, without going into too much detail, what would be like your top 3 or your top 1? Like, where do you go from there?
You start with the stories you're telling yourself as to why that's the answer. So why are you saying yes to everything? And there's a beautiful technique I know. Actually, Blake taught me this technique when we coached together years ago. It's called the 5 whys. And it's literally getting to the root cause analysis of the thing. So you've realized you're a people pleaser. Why? And just literally keep asking yourself why until you get to the root memory, the root cause of what started that people-pleasing behavior. It could be, an example is, my mum told me to be friends with everyone, to be kind to everyone. So there's a story you can then go away with and do whatever processing you need to do with whoever to unravel that thread. For the most part, people pleasing is incredibly complex. So there's not just going to be one why, but the awareness is the kickstart, and then you can start to pull at the threads that are kind of playing out more than others. So for you, the example that you shared around being the nice guy was, well, society or friends or whatever has told me that the nice guy gets the girl. And then you unravel that. Well, why? Why do I believe that? Well, because I see it in the movies, or because I hear that's what women want. Well, why? Why am I playing that out? And then it's almost like a disconnect from what the truth is versus what actually is reality.
And fundamentally, it was driven by fear.
100%. And this is the thing, right? All of people pleasing is driven by some sort of fear, and not for all of us, but a lot of the time it can be a trauma response. And for me, it was a massive trauma response, and is a trauma response because I'm incredibly conditioned to be the peacekeeper and to divert attention away from conflict. So when it comes to that, then obviously there's a big unraveling to do, as opposed to, I want to be the nice guy because I think the nice guy gets the girl. There's different levels of intensity when it comes to our people-pleasing behavior, but all of it for the most part is rooted in fear. But the other two are actually shame and guilt. Guilt is huge. If I don't say yes to this, it makes me a bad person, because we've conditioned ourselves to believe that people pleasing is as black and white as a yes or a no. And it's so nuanced. And yeah, this is a conversation around all of the grey matter between.
Yeah. And also, just to really reinforce, this is a men and women issue.
Oh, yeah.
There's no discrimination.
Oh, it's not gendered. I speak from my experience of being a woman, but my God, like, the people pleasing thing is, it's everyone. Everyone has experienced it in multiple ways. And I can imagine that as a male, it would be very much around being that nice guy or being perceived a certain way in relationship or other. As a woman, it's huge and incredibly detrimental. Just speaking from the perspective of being a woman is, if you are anything but the nice girl, for the most part, you are labeled as the bitch, the troublemaker, the bossy one, the outspoken one. And we've been gaslit for lifetimes around doing anything other than being the yes woman. But times are changing, and it's a mass, like, it's lifetimes of reconditioning, but it's incredibly powerful work.
Do you find people pleasing men attractive?
Men that people please, do I find that attractive?
Or what parts of it? Because it's like, there's that line of like, you don't also want to then go down the path of being, I'm just going to be a fucking asshole, because that's now.
God, no. Well, I think that's where we get it wrong. It's like, well, the opposite of people pleasing is putting me first always, and then that lends itself to selfishness, which I again dissect in the book. And I think this is where we can get, like, it's so nuanced. It's like there's a difference between being nice and a pushover and being kind-hearted with boundaries. And I really respect, and again, it's not gendered. Like, it doesn't matter for me whether it's a man or a woman. When they have strong boundaries and they're clear, I find that really attractive. I find that this person understands who they are, and I know how to, it makes it easier for me to show up in that relationship versus someone who, I guess, is people pleasing can lend itself to pushover behavior and being a yes man or woman. That is a dynamic that I'm not necessarily going to spend a lot of time and energy in, because I don't feel my best self in it, because I actually don't know the truth of what I'm receiving from that person. I don't know whether they're saying yes because they're in a pushover state or whether they genuinely want to show up for me, you know? So definitely don't find that trait attractive, but also I fully understand that trait too. So it's more like, I guess I see it from a lens of compassion and understanding. Yeah, but not attraction. No.
Yeah, it's. I remember the first few times I was aware of someone having solid boundaries and be like, no, sorry, I can't do this or blah blah, and it would trigger me, and I would shadow again, like onto them, like the sort of person they are, but at a deeper level. When I sat with them, there was a level of respect and attraction that I had for that person, man, whatever it was, as opposed to the person who was always there and always available and whatever. And I was like, I don't know what it is, but there's something attractive about that.
Yeah, it's because they hold themselves in a high regard, which is a deep level of respect, because that energy then demands respect in return. I find with the people-pleasing behaviors and characters in my life now, because I've done a lot of work on untangling from it, but the people-pleasing behaviors in my life now, they are the ones that are the most exhausted. And so they'll show up, but they're not actually listening. They're not actually fully present. And you're almost having to repeat yourself 87 times to a person in this way, because yes, they're hyper available, but they're not actually with you. So they could be listening, but they're not hearing. Whereas someone who's like, I use an example of me. I'm not the biggest phone call gal. Don't like phone calls. Text me, voice note me. Every now and then we'll drop into a phone call. It's just my thing. But people know that when they get me on the phone, I'm present, I'm with you, I'm listening, I'm hearing. Versus if I was like, oh, Janoah's calling me, I'm in the middle of 80 things, okay, I better answer anyway. People pleaser, I better answer because he needs me. I'm not going to be present with you. I'm going to be zoned out because I'm doing 87 other things. And then you're not getting the best version of me. And you're probably leaving that conversation feeling like, Hollie wasn't even with me then. Yeah. So we're doing each other a disservice, you know?
So one thing I really wanted to delve into with you is around the path of motherhood, letting go, and partnership with, you know, Trent, your husband, as well around that. And so the first, you know, obviously the birth didn't go to plan. I wanted to speak to the concept of letting go, and I know that you had, and I'm not a father, you know, I'm not expecting. Where I was very quick to, and I could very easily look at a couple of parents there with their child on a screen or doing something that I didn't. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be that kind of parent, you know. I want to let my right. And here I am sitting here going, I fucking know anything, mate. And I'd love you to speak to that, because I know you had like ideals of what you wanted, and then the reality, and then coming to terms with having to let go of that. I'd love you to speak to.
Oh my God, it's huge. Like my ego has taken a pummeling since becoming a mother. There's this fabulous quote, and it's, the best parent we ever are is the parent we are before we have kids. Like we are so great at parenting before kids come along. We have all these ideas. And look, when it came to the birth of my little girl, I had the ideal of the way it would go, but I also knew for the most part, birth's going to go the way it's going to go. So it was actually more my breastfeeding experience that threw me, which we do not have to get into detail with. But basically what happened is a lot of traumatic experiences, and I had to bottle feed my baby girl and formula feed her. She was losing weight. I had a low supply. It was not part of the plan. It was deeply traumatic. And as a non-parent, we can look at someone, for instance, bottle feeding their child or formula feeding their child, and make assumptions like, that's so lazy of them. Why aren't they breastfeeding? Don't they know all the benefits of breastfeeding? Blah, blah, all the things that I would have perceived before I had a baby. Whereas for me, showing up like that, I'm feeling experiences like, I'm so embarrassed. All I wanted to do was breastfeed. I was feeding her 18 hours a day and getting no sleep. I can't leave the house because I have a bigger bust anyway. So this is incredibly awkward and uncomfortable. And it really highlighted to me the judgment that we can place on people in experiences that we have no idea what they've been through. For me, I've had complex PTSD as a result of particularly the breastfeeding, but also my postpartum experience. And I've been depressed for the majority of the year. And I think there's a mass disconnect societally in new parents and what they actually need from society versus what we assume they need. And I've found that massively in my experience, where people are well-meaning and well-intended, but again, it's that piece around what we desire and want and sharing that versus what people assume we want, and asking for help. As new parents, it's hard anyway. And then when you go through thing after thing after thing, blow after blow after blow of traumatic experiences, I can't explain to you. I was saying to someone yesterday, there's hard and then there's this, and all parents listening to this will totally resonate. And anyone who doesn't have a kid will not understand. And there's no wronging in that. It's just that we don't know what we don't know. And I'm really passionate about bridging the gap between the truthful experiences of parenting, especially new parents and first-time parents, versus the perceived image of, oh, this new couple, they just had a new baby, they're in this love bubble. Like, the amount of people that told me in the newborn stage to enjoy this bliss bubble, enjoy the newborn cuddles, me sitting there going, this is the worst I've felt in my life, and what is wrong with me if I'm not experiencing what everyone's telling me I should be experiencing. Like, a lot of the time we slap a bumper sticker on an experience because that's what we hear other people say. Like, before I became a parent, I would say, enjoy the newborn bliss bubble, like enjoy the time and the newborn snuggles. I wouldn't know the weight that that actually has. Now I know if there's a new parent in my community, I'm going to reach out and say, how are you? How's baby going, and how are you, and what are you moving through, and how can I show up for you, and how can I help you? It's really just that slight shift in conversation that will literally change the trajectory of someone's mental health experience in parenting.
This is what I'd love to sort of go a bit more into. So Exhibit A, someone who is starting to have a lot of people around them have children, and there's going to be lots of listeners as well who are in the same, maybe they're about to have kids, or they have friends who have kids. Are there some like key things that you have learned that'd be like, just maybe like the don't do's or try not to's, or wording or language, and then like a little list of like, you may think you're doing the right thing, but actually just to think about it, and then what would be the ideal ways to behave, just to get some key pointers out of that.
I just want to thank you for this conversation. It actually fully makes me want to cry, because they're not being had, and it's so, this is a trigger warning for like a trigger warning, mental health and suicide. So just trigger warning, but the highest death rate in new mums is suicide.
Wow.
And that is alarming and not spoken about.
I didn't know.
Right. And it's not realized. And this is why I'm really passionate about it, because things have been incredibly tough for me this year. And these conversations like will literally save lives. And so thank you for allowing us to have these conversations. But the don't do's. Don't tell a new parent to enjoy the bliss bubble. Don't tell a new parent that this is the best time ever and lap up all those cuddles. You've got to be incredibly sensitive. You just don't know. They could be enjoying it, which is great, but also as likely, it could be a really dark time. So rather than enjoy the newborn time and blah, 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 it's send them a message checking in and saying, just so you know, I don't expect a reply. Congratulations, and I hope all is going well, but I'm here for you. How are you feeling? And what can I do for you? Because each new parent is going to have different requirements, right? Zero expectation or judgment if that parent doesn't reply to your message or doesn't get back to your call. Keep contacting them. If it's every month, if it's every few weeks, just a little check-in so you know I'm here. Just letting you know I'm thinking of you. Those check-ins are incredibly important. Your friend or the new parents in your life, they will come back around. But the other thing I think we assume is that postpartum is like 12 weeks and then everything's back and kicking goals and gears. Like, I'm still healing 10 months, almost 11 months postpartum. So, and I have noticed a lot of my friends without children have kind of disappeared. And I know it's because I haven't been able to carry weight in friendships, and the other parents get it. And there are, don't get me wrong, like you and I, we're solid as, right? You don't have kids, we're still showing up for each other, but let them drop the ball, because they are literally in survival, and probably for a longer time than you would assume. So it's one of those friendship pieces that carry the weight for a little bit, not in a way where they're taking the piss, but a lot of the time the ball will be dropped, messages will go unanswered, people will forget things. And that's just, if we can have a little bit of compassion around that, that would be so helpful. What else do you not do? Don't ask about the birth. They will offer the birth experience if they want to share it. Or you could say, I'm here to listen if you'd like to share the birth experience, but don't ask about details unless they're offering it. Same goes with feeding. Don't ask, oh, you're bottle feeding, what happened? Or, oh, don't comment on the baby's weight. Don't comment on, oh, she's so tiny. The amount of people, my baby was malnourished basically because the volume of my breast milk was so small. Which I can talk about now, but I couldn't at the time. And people being like, oh my God, she's so tiny. Oh my God, she still looks like a new, oh my God, she's so cute and tiny. Like I would get from shop assistants, people out, like it'd be a huge deal that I'm out of the house. And then I'd get 7 times people telling me how small my baby is, and it would just spiral me. So we do not comment on anyone's weight, not an adult, babies, right? We do not comment on human beings in general's weight, right? And the same goes like, oh my God, your baby's so big. Are you sure they're only 10 weeks? It could look like 10 months. Don't comment on the baby's weight. So important. Do offer, and don't even offer, just drop food, make food, send food vouchers if you're not in the area, groceries, deliveries, that sort of stuff. Even now, it's like, because you're so busy keeping a little human alive, you do forget basic hygiene and basic, those sorts of things matter. Hire a cleaner if you've got the money to for your friend for a week, or check in and see if they've booked in with a women's health physio and can I cover that for you. I have a friend of mine whose sister does yoni steaming, and when she heard about my birth, because I offered her the details, she said, okay, I'm booking you a session with my sister because I know you need it and you're not going to do it yourself, and it's organized. I didn't even have to think other than show up, and it made me cry because it's like, you're thinking of me, and I think this is where some societally things need to shift. It's like, let the parents look after the baby and figure that stuff out, and let society look after the parents, right?
Right.
It's exactly, it's the village, it's the community, and showing up in the ways that we've completely disconnected from, so that the parents, and this goes for dads, I know your audience is men, right? Like new dads, they are doing their bloody best to hold it together, watching their partner completely be annihilated by this experience, show up in ways that are not who they were before they had children. The transition from maiden to mother is like the biggest transition we'll go through. Holding that, plus the traumas of witnessing their own partner in trauma states, and having the pressure of being this provider in whatever way, be it financial provider, plus solid foundational provider, plus emotional provider. Check in on the men in your life that are new parents, because they need to know and reestablish who they are in this transition. Like, who are they as a father? Who are they outside of being a father and provider? Where are they reconnecting with the social aspects of their lives and hobbies and sport and all of those things? Incredibly important. So yeah, definitely don't forget the dads either.
I actually was going to speak to that with ultimate respect, obviously the woman going through this experience, but also then the male who finds himself floundering on the side.
Oh yeah,
who they are and how they're meant to show up, and I'm also hearing, and the more I look into it, a lot of blokes who are also struggling emotionally and mentally in the state. So even I'd love you to speak to, I obviously not into too much detail about obviously you and Trent, more as generalization, whatever feels comfortable for you, is in speaking to also how can the support go both ways, even both. So maybe speak to first, like, here are some things as a woman you may not understand or realize that you've seen the men go through, and then vice versa for men. These are some things as a husband and partner to that, like, you'll see me change, and this might, I'd love to understand a bit more what you've learned from that experience too.
So I can really see in my experience with Trenny, he's been incredible. The way because obviously he's been through the trauma with me, and it's not his body that it's happening to, but it's still his family and his heart and his connection. So while he's healing emotionally from those experiences, the beautiful yet fucking tumultuous time of being a new father, connecting with a baby. Also, there, especially in, I don't know where it is, like overseas, but in this country, you get 2 weeks of government covered paternity leave. And then depending on where you work, you might get a couple of other more weeks. But for the most part, it's straight back to work after this momentous shift. And so for the men, they're thrown back into things way prematurely before they've even had a chance to catch their breath. They're sleep deprived, but still showing up to work. And my husband's a tradesman. So like when you're a tradie on the tools, sleep deprived, it can be dangerous, right? And then you're dealing with coming back home after a day where this is just personal experience, like I've been completely distressed the whole time on my own because I'm trying to do all this stuff by myself. So then taking the reins and going straight from that big work day straight into father mode so I can get an hour of sleep or so I can have a shower. And then he gets to have his little bit of shower at the end of the night. Or, it's like a recipe for disaster. So if there's not a good support network around the new dads, it's like so key that the men are looking after the new dads in the community and taking them out, making sure they have a night off eventually when they can leave the house, when the partner allows them to leave the house. It's a bit like that though. It's like, yeah, you need to be in that little bubble for a bit, but like any assistance that the village, inverted commas, can give to the parents both. So we have our beautiful friend and doula Zoe, and she would come over and hold our baby girl so that me and Trent could actually get time together, so we could actually have a hug, because one of us was always holding the baby, and it can be the tiniest little thing, but it's like showing up for the men in that way, encouraging them to get out when they can, going for a run with them or getting out in nature. So important. Like I would probably steer clear from, and this is just me, just from what I know about alcoholism specifically, to be honest, my own personal upbringing with those sorts of things. I'd probably steer clear from like, let's go have a few beers and like, let's ride the weekend off because you've had a hard time, and steer clear from that. More like, let's go to the gym, let's go for a swim, let's go for a surf, let's go play golf. Just those sorts of state of flow activities that can be introduced back into the new dad's life, where he's having positive outlets that aren't gonna add to, I guess, the emotional challenges that he's experiencing. And then on the flip side, for the men, whether it's the new dad witnessing the new mum go through this transition, or whether it's just a male friend watching a female friend of theirs going through this new transition, like they will not be the person that you knew. It's impossible to go through that experience and be the same. They're going to have more of a force about them, more power. And while we're getting the hang of it, that's going to come across as potentially being more aggressive, potentially being more angry, a bit more fiery, potentially lashing out a bit more. Be able to hold that with the understanding that we're wearing in new shoes. We emotionally, there's this coined term, I don't know how I feel about it, but it's called mum rage, and it's very, very real in terms of the anger, the visceral anger that is activated in a new parent, particularly a new mother. It's what actually prompted me to get help this year in terms of therapy, because I was waking up with this visceral anger moving through my body, like physically wanting to throw punches. And it's part of it is me never allowing myself to feel the full experience of anger up until becoming a mother, but also regardless of the fact of everything that unfolded in birth and beyond, I felt completely unheld in that. And so it was manifesting as this rage and anger, rather than judging the woman for that, or feeling like it's actually a direct attack at you, witnessing it and going, she needs to be held more and she needs to be heard more, and asking, again, I can't emphasize this enough, it's so subtle, but like, how can I show up for you? What do you need? And a lot of the time we're going to say, I don't know, I just need to vent, or I don't know. Trent's brilliant at that. He'll say, go, I've got this, go for a drive, go have a beach walk. Like encouraging that alone time, I feel, is super important. But to be honest as well, still figuring it out. 10 months in and still figuring it out.
Of course. And the one last little piece that I wanted to talk on with you and around this was the concept of provider and providing.
Yes.
The big one. Obviously, naturally in the masculine is a drive to provide, but I feel that for a lot of men and potentially even women, the concept of providing can be quite one-dimensional in the sense of you provide by making money, and it can be quite emasculating, disempowering for a man if he's struggling to make money, or maybe the dynamic of the family, like in yours, that you have the ability to make big money too, right?
Yes.
And so while yes, providing is a extremely healthy trait to have, I'd love you to dissect the concept of providing and how that can be bigger than financial and what that can look like in a partnership relationship.
Yeah. It's such an important conversation because I feel like, the one-dimensional nature of it is actually doing us a disservice in the dynamic of relationships that we're seeing, especially in this day and age where women are working, as hard as men, and we're not caveman days, but you even think of caveman days where it was like the provider was going out and getting the food. It wasn't going out and making the money. It was going out and providing in that way. And I think the undercurrent of provision is safety and stability. So in the masculine inverted commas role of providing safety and stability, that could be money. However, it could also be many other things, including being a stay-at-home dad, where the wife can go and be her expressive self, go and make money and play in that dynamic. Because we've got to remember, yes, masculine, feminine energy, great, cool. Men, female relationship, great, cool. But there's so much nuance in all of that. And also, I'm talking personal example here. I have a really healthy relationship with my masculine energy. And when that's not put to use, it gets destructive. So I actually have that desire to provide for me and my family in me as part of my healthy masculine. When I'm not making money in the ways that I know and love to do, which come very easily and naturally to me, I feel like I'm wasting that dimension of my energy. So it's like looking at healthy masc femme energy ungendered in the male in the relationship, the female in the relationship, both men, both female, whatever it is, are both getting a beautiful dance between the two. And obviously, particularly when you become a parent for the first time, sacrifices will be made. And I've had to put majority of my career on hold this entire year, which is, I had to, right? It's just negotiation, not even negotiation, but it just had to be made. But provider energy, regardless, as Trent in the relationship, talking from personal experience, I tell him this, he provides for me by being that solid foundation I can turn to vent, by when I'm being my incredibly expressive feminine state of feeling all my emotion, he's solid and holds it. He doesn't get scared of it. He doesn't judge me for it. When I say, I'm going to book Reiki this afternoon, or I'm going to be making funny noises because I'm doing kinesiology session in the other room, he's completely solid and holds it. That is provider for me. It's the I've got you in all of your expressive needs and self, in all of your emotional states. I've got you and I'm not going anywhere. That's not about money exchange. That is a solid energetic foundation. And then we add the layers of, he could also be the breadwinner and he could also not be, it could be me, or he could also be going out and doing the market hole. I'm thinking of hunter gatherer, he could go out and do the farmer's market on the weekend, or maybe we do it together, but he makes dinner as much as I make, it's whatever works for your family unit. But the provider notion is let's get bigger scale here. What makes the woman, the feminine, feel safe, supported, held, solid and nourished? Do that. And money might be part of it and it might not be. I feel safer, to be honest, when I'm making money. It's a trauma thing, but I really, really like to. So if we were going, oh, well, Trent's the man, so he needs to provide, that would come at a cost to our dynamic and to my well-being. So it's so much deeper, runs so much deeper than just man makes money, woman stays home. And I'm going to annoy people saying this, by the way, because I've noticed there's been a mass shift back to that kind of, almost want to say that old school way of man goes and does the work, woman stays home and parents. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely not. However, in our dynamic, that will just never feel fulfilling for me.
this is the point that I think is really important to make. While that dynamic can still be healthy if that's what works for them both, 100%.
Yes.
Right. And if that's how you're both driven and you've discussed it. And I think the important piece out of this is like, discuss what providing means to both of you.
Yes.
Right. And what you need. And then like, fuck what everyone else thinks, fuck what your friends think, your parents think, or what they're doing. It's like, what do you need? And it might be the husband's like, for me, I feel like I want to provide for you and make money. But then the partner's like, yes, I love that. But me too. So also providing for the man might be like, okay, cool. I consider it's important to you. How about I take a day off? So I provide the 4 and you get to do your 1 and like, there we go.
This is exactly it. I mean, today's a Friday when we're recording this, and Trent now works 4 days as provider and I get my Friday. And it's exactly it. It's that clear communication. So you're both on the same page of what provision is, what safety feels like, how that looks, and then being able to play out in those dynamics, which, to be honest, will be constantly changing, especially in that first year of parenting specifically, because you don't actually know until you're in it. You don't know what you're going to want until you're in it. I tried the stay-at-home mum thing, and it's power to the stay-at-home parents of the world, because it's really, really hard. And I actually can't do it. It's so hard. So yeah, it's but you don't know until you're in it. I could have thrived, but I haven't. So back to the drawing board.
Oh, dude, I love it. All right. We went everywhere I wanted to go there. That was perfect.
Oh, good.
Yeah. The conversations, they intrigue me. I mean, there's obviously personal interest in pleasing and the potential of being a father one day, and supporting friends and helping. Obviously, I work with Men for Momentum and a lot of women in my own business and my Maverick, but these conversations we're having, I've never had them before. I don't know this shit.
Well, I didn't either. And this is why I'm having them. Like, even on my own podcast, like the women that are like, literally an episode that went out today is, why is no one talking about this? Like that's the conversation. And it's, I don't know if it's because we don't understand it, so we look away. And that's why I find this so valuable, especially in bringing men into the conversation with, like, it's a both. It's not an us or them. And this is where change really starts to happen. Yeah, it's really important.
So, firstly, when's the book out?
29th of November.
Oh, put it in your diaries, boys and girls.
Get out there. People Pleaser's Guide to Putting Yourself First. It's a great Christmas present. Just going to plug it. It's an activity book too, so you work through it. It's a great way to start the new year.
There you go. Any other plugs you want? Hollie Azzopardi, go.
That's it. That's the main plug. Buy my book. Share it, buy it, love it.
Love it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for navigating the dogs and the lawnmower.
Thank you for being patient with me. Do you know what? I'm really glad that the second half of this was like uninterrupted. It's like the key stuff was
that was the juice. Push through. If you push through the first bit, good on you. You got to the juice. you got to the juice. I think maybe that's how you need to pitch it. Be like, just get through this to this timestamp, because we get ruled. You're right. I'm gonna do that. Good point. Do it. Good. Thank you so much. Bye. See you soon.